I've dealt with permit bullies before, but never one who thought she owned the street under my tires. The HOA president, Corinne with a clipboard, marched up my driveway, coffee mug screaming, "Queen of the neighborhood," and announced, "Your bargain house is tanking our property values." That's when I realized she had no idea who she'd just challenged. She stood in front of my newly bought house, manicured fingers clutching a mug labeled HOA president, because someone has to keep you in line. Her words sliced through the quiet, loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac to hear. "So this is the cheap house you bought. You really think that paint color meets HOA guidelines?" The neighborhood group chat must have been buzzing, because within minutes 2 other board members appeared, offering polite smiles and judgmental eyes. I kept my composure. I'd closed on the property just a week earlier, a 1960s ranch with chipped bricks but solid bones. To her, it was proof someone lowered the tone of the neighborhood. To me, it was step one of something much, much bigger. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just another homeowner. I was a developer, one who had learned long ago never to reveal all the deeds, literally and figuratively, at once. If you love seeing HOA bullies meet their match, go ahead and hit that subscribe. It helps me dig up more true homeowner justice like this one. But that didn't stop her harassment from starting immediately. By day 2, I found HOA violation letters taped to my door like sticky notes of disapproval, unapproved mailbox design, driveway discoloration, improper grass height. It was as if the bylaws had turned into Corinne's personal menu of grievances. By day 5, I received an email. Failure to comply with HOA standards may result in fines and legal action. The kicker, the HOA's lawyer was her brother-in-law. I avoided confrontation at first, until I woke one night to find a bright light flashing outside. Corinne was in the street, taking photos of my trash bins. "Just documenting for the board," she chirped, not realizing I had installed brand new security cameras with audio capture that very morning. That was my first piece of evidence. Next came the sprinkler sabotage, car keying, and mysteriously missing mail. Each petty move only fueled me more. I started quietly collecting every snippet of proof: doorbell footage, email timestamps, recorded phone calls. But the biggest clue came from something I almost missed. The property lines on the HOA's own documentation didn't match the county plat map. I spent evenings poring over plats, deeds, and faxed bylaws that looked like they hadn't been updated since the 90s. I used my surveyor friend to run GPS coordinate checks using a drone. The results floored both of us. Half of the private street the HOA claimed to manage wasn't legally theirs. It was privately deeded land that somehow never transferred to the association when the builder dissolved. The current records showed that land was still held under a dormant holding company that I now owned. That realization hit me like a late Christmas gift. See, I'd bought my house through that same holding company, and with it came the rights to the entire roadway easement. Corinne had been mocking me for owning the cheap house, not realizing I effectively owned the pavement beneath hers. I kept quiet. I updated none of my neighbors. I just kept pressing record. I met with a property lawyer, one who used to work for the county assessor's office. When he saw the plat discrepancy, he grinned. "Son, if this checks out," he said, tapping my folder, "their whole HOA power structure collapses." That was all I needed to hear. Over the next few days, I set up a local consultation with the municipal clerk and a deputy sheriff. I wanted witnesses who'd confirm chain of title and boundaries before things escalated further. And escalate they did. Because before I could even finalize my evidence packet, Corinne decided to stage the ultimate humiliation, an emergency HOA meeting, to address the non-compliant resident at 114 Maple Crest. Perfect. Exactly where I wanted her. The HOA clubhouse smelled of burnt coffee and smugness that night. Karen had sent out an urgent summons, plastered the notice on every mailbox, and even put a folding sign at the street entrance reading Community Standards Emergency Meeting. Translation: she finally thought she'd cornered me. I walked in 10 minutes early, documents neatly stored in a black portfolio, my lawyer friend seated beside me like a silent thundercloud. Karen's expression faltered for just a blink before she straightened up behind her little folding table, her throne of laminated agendas. "Mr. Carter," she began, stressing my last name as if it were a misdemeanor, "your continued refusal to comply with HOA regulations has forced the board to consider enforcement measures. Your paint color, industrial beige, as you call it, has not been approved, nor has your fence style." Half the residents squirmed, half looked thrilled for drama. I let her talk for a good 5 minutes. Then I stood, pressed a button on my tablet, and the projector behind me flickered to life. "Before we discuss that," I said evenly, "perhaps the group should know who actually owns this street." Confused murmurs, Karen's forehead creased. "That's enough of this nonsense." Click. The county plat map appeared, clean as gospel. Then the highlighted parcel lines, the exact boundaries confirmed by my land surveyor, showed something unmistakable. The entire road, cul-de-sac loops, signposts, and even the decorative rock garden sat within a tract deeded to Maple Development Holdings, LLC. The name on the LLC, mine. Flashback reveal how the deed was found and prepared. 2 weeks earlier, my lawyer had traced the old builder's archives to a state repository, buried under liens from decades ago. Turns out, when the builder went under, the roadway parcel was left in limbo. The HOA had simply assumed control, maintaining it without legally owning it. When I bought Lot 14 through Maple Development Holdings, the omitted parcel transferred along with it, a clerical miracle of oversight. We triple-checked it with the county clerk and had a sheriff-signed affidavit verifying the title chain. So now, as I faced the HOA crowd, I had more than just proof. I had jurisdiction. Karen flushed crimson. "This is preposterous. The HOA governs all common areas." I slid another paper onto the table. "Except this one. Here's the easement grant. Since you're technically using private property, all HOA signage, dues collection, and enforcement tied to the road would constitute unauthorized activity." A gasp rippled across the room like wind through dry leaves. At that moment, my surveyor's drone camera, linked live to my laptop, showed real-time overhead footage. I zoomed in on the painted HOA property, signposts, and drainage fences along the curb. Beside each, GPS overlays displayed coordinates clearly falling within my parcel. "You see," my lawyer said calmly, "every time you've issued a violation or fine involving curbside features, you've done so on land not lawfully under HOA control." Karen tried to recover her footing. "Even if that's true, the HOA will contest ownership." I smiled. "They can try, but remember, every dollar of HOA funds spent on this road could now be considered misappropriation. I have the deputy's statement confirming there was never a vote nor recorded maintenance agreement." That one landed hard. The treasurer, sitting 2 seats from Karen, shifted visibly pale. To prove ongoing misuse, I'd orchestrated a subtle test earlier that week. I'd placed a motion-activated camera disguised as a mailbox ornament and a small GPS tag beneath one of the HOA's road cones. The footage showed Karen's husband, under cover of dusk, moving signs and repainting boundary markers to match a forged diagram. I played the time-stamped clip across the projector screen. The room froze, someone coughed, someone else whispered, "Oh no." Karen lunged for the remote. "Stop this immediately. This is defamation." "Defamation?" my lawyer asked, his tone smooth as cold steel. "You mean the recorded evidence of your willful misrepresentation of property lines?" The deputy I'd invited, yes, he'd been quietly standing near the back, stepped forward, badge gleaming under the fluorescent light. "Ma'am, might be smart to let him finish," he said. Karen's clipboard trembled. I let silence hang. Then I turned to the neighbors, the ones who'd sat quietly for months under her rule, terrified of fines and letters and whispered threats about community image. "I'm not against HOAs," I told them. "When they're lawful, they help neighborhoods thrive. But when they turn into a personal fiefdom, that's when people like Karen forget what ownership really means. So tonight, we're drawing the line literally." The gasps and murmurs turned into reluctant clapping. A few even whispered, "About time." Karen stood rigid, her jaw clenched, her authority unraveling one boundary stake at a time. She had no idea the real twist was still waiting just around the corner. Because mere hours after that meeting, she'd commit the one mistake that would end her reign completely, and hand me the ultimate satisfaction of owning her defeat outright. Morning sunlight hit the pavement like a floodlight on a stage. Karen's house sat at the curve of the cul-de-sac, all shutters and self-righteousness. The night after the meeting, she'd stormed back onto her street with a paint roller and a vengeance. The footage from my security cameras told the rest. Karen and two bored loyalists repainting the boundary markers back to their old positions, covering the bright orange tape from my surveyor's measurements. It was, in the most literal sense, an act of trespass. When the deputy arrived the next morning with a citation notice, she exploded. "You can't trespass on your own neighborhood." The deputy, stone calm, pointed to the paperwork. "Ma'am, this isn't your neighborhood road anymore. Technically, you need his permission to stand on it." Her face turned a shade, usually reserved for emergency stop signs. The county courthouse that month hosted the most anticipated HOA, hearing the local paper had seen in years. People filled the benches, neighbors, former presidents of other HOAs, even a pair of real estate podcasters with recording mics. Karen's defense hinged on a single argument, that the HOA had a prescriptive right to the road based on use. My lawyer, in his measured tone, dismantled it point by point with chain of title records, survey data, GPS evidence, and the deputy's affidavit confirming unauthorized maintenance. Then I took the stand. I played a short montage, doorbell footage of her harassment, clips of her lecturing me about community standards, followed by aerial shots of the property lines overlaid with the county's own tax portal. The contrast was deliciously poetic. When asked why I pursued the matter, I answered simply, "Because property rights matter, and accountability matters even more." That line hit the evening news. The judge ruled decisively in my favor. The HOA was ordered to cease all enforcement and signage placement on the road. Karen was required to issue a written apology, reimburse legal costs, and, this part was exquisite, file new easement petitions if the HOA wanted continued access to the cul-de-sac. Translation: they'd need my permission to use the road. By the time the gavel dropped, Karen looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Neighbors buzzed outside the courthouse, half in shock, half in relief. Several quietly approached me to say thank you, relieved the tyranny of letters and fines might finally end. But I wasn't done yet. A month later, new signs went up along Maple Crest Lane, not HOA ones but mine. They read, "Private road access granted by owner. Drive safely. Treat any IGHBORS kindly." No threats, no hidden fines, just a polite reminder of decency. Word spread fast, and soon the local press coined the story, "The man who bought his revenge, one street at a time." The HOA quietly dissolved 6 weeks later after a mass resignation. Karen, stripped of her presidency, sold her house and moved. Ironically, the deed transfer still required my signature for road access certification. I signed it with a silent internal toast. Looking back, there was never real satisfaction in the humiliation. It was in restoring fairness. For too long, officials like Karen believed rules existed for control instead of community. Ownership isn't power, it's responsibility. The irony: the cheap house she mocked turned into one of the highest valued properties in the area after the HOA collapse. With fewer restrictions, neighbors painted, landscaped, and rebuilt in freedom. The street finally looked like a neighborhood again, colorful, lively, human. Sometimes justice doesn't need drama. It just needs a dotted line and patience. And as I stand on my porch now, coffee in hand, I still chuckle at the thought that the same woman who mocked my cheap little house never knew she was standing on my driveway, because the whole street beneath her heels already belonged to me.